Good evening. Welcome to our reconvened school board meeting recessed from yesterday, March 19th. The time is now 5 p.m. Our mission is to provide an excellent, equitable education in a safe, supportive environment so all students will succeed and contribute to a diverse and changing society. Mrs. Richardson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Burgess,
Here.
Miss Carol Hubbard,
Here.
Mr. Doran,
Here.
Miss Julian,
Here.
Miss Maple,
Here.
Mrs. Hardy,
Here.
Mrs. Barnett.
Here.
Thank you. The board has a quorum.
We're going to go back into our continued discussion of our FY26 proposed budget. Last night, we left off in a spot where we were close to an approved budget. Mr. DeGraw, if you could please pull that up and remind the board of where we left off last night.
Alrighty, thank you, President Barnett. So up on the screen, we have in balancing act the changes that were made last night reflected in the tool showing the $28,000 surplus that I referenced last night. The board has two documents in front of you, the FY26 recommended budget motion language document there with the total of all funds. That would be the motion that a board member would make to be seconded for final approval of the recommended budget by the board. And then the second item is a memorandum outlining the changes from the proposed budget to the recommended budget. So including any changes in revenue or new cuts or restored cuts from the proposed budget or new investments. I think there's all of those found in there. So that is a summary of where we're at now, and stand for any questions or ready for the board to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. DeGraw. And so now, if the board is ready, I would accept a motion. I know we have one on the table, but now that we have our budget in front of us, we need to have the motion that has the totals in front of us.
Move.
Sorry, go ahead, Mrs. Hardy.
Move to reconsider the cuts at Barnett Magnet School. And I'd like to speak to my motion.
Second.
It has now been seconded. Mrs. Hardy, if you would please speak to your motion.
Currently, Barnett has budgeted 31 full-time equivalents positions, with 23.5 being certified teachers. That includes their principal. We are cutting Barnett down to 28.5 FTE through board action, but only certified positions are being cut, so their new certified position number would be 21. Due to PTR increases included in this budget, they will also lose an additional FTE, bringing their totals in the board budget to 27.5 and 20 certified teachers. For reference, the administration's proposed budget, they would lose 1 FTE due to a PTR increase, bringing them down to 30 full-time teachers, just through the loss of 1 elementary teacher, not 30 full-time teachers, but 30 FTE. Barnett is projected to have 417 students next year, 100% of deed capacity. They are our fullest school in the district. They are also a school of choice, so they do not receive busing, which already saves the district money through transportation costs. Through the foundation formula, Barnett, at 417 students, brings in $3.7 million. For further comparison, if you look at LAD K-8, which is projected to have 386 students with a deed capacity of 553, that puts them at 69% of capacity, and with a current budgeted FTE of 26 total and 20 certified FTE. They are also a neighborhood school, so students receive busing and additional grant-funded services and positions due to their military population. Through the foundation formula, LAD K-8 at 386 students brings in $3.5 million. Barnett Magnet is projected to have 31 more students than LAD in a building filled to capacity and with no transportation, and there will be no explorations provided. At this projected enrollment, Barnett generates $226,000 more than LAD K-8. The cut to explorations comes at a savings to the district of $315,000, making keeping their exploratory staff only an actual investment of $88,000 over what they generate versus LAD K-8. Last night, the board invested an additional $60,000 in LAD K-8 to preserve their middle school model. If this is the logic of how this board decides to serve its only magnet model, and school of choice that is beloved at 100% capacity with a 500 student wait list, I can think of no clearer example of why communities would be fleeing to charter schools to get out from under the board's decision-making power.
Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Burgess.
Through the chair to the maker of the motion, I'm curious what cuts you would make to allow for this change.
I think we need to figure that out together, but I think doing this is not acceptable.
Any other comments, questions from the board? Ms. Carol Hubbard.
As one of the only people who voted to keep the 2.5 positions at Barnett, I absolutely support it still. I think it's the wrong cut to make.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Maple.
I would advocate for these positions being the very first top priority if we receive additional funds. From looking at where we were at the end of last night, I see that we've made a ton of cuts already, and we've also taken on as much risk as I'm comfortable taking on, and I don't see a reasonable path forward to find that funding at this juncture, but I would advocate for it to be the very first thing to prioritize.
Mrs. Hardy.
We have, in effect, made Barnett Magnet School the least desirable, not really neighborhood, but now is funded like a neighborhood school in our district. Would any of you want to send your children to a school at 100% capacity with no additional benefits? It doesn't make sense. We are breaking a working model. And I will also say, I know both teachers and students at this school, and I had a teacher tell me today that she has a job offer in hand from another school, and she thinks she's an idiot for turning it down. But it's to move to a charter, and she's currently at Barnett Magnet. But she doesn't want to leave her kids. We are breaking something for no reason.
Ms. Carol Hubbard.
So I just want to suggest that maybe we, as a collective board, possibly rethink the buyback position. Instead of buying back PTR, instead of buying back the lower class sizes, maybe we should be prioritizing the lower class sizes, which is what we all agreed to do in the beginning, and then buying back administration, buying back vacancy rate, buying back the other things, because it seems to me like I used to get pink slipped every year. And so as a person who got pink slipped, it's a little discouraging. Well, no, it's a lot discouraging. And what ends up happening, though, is you end up going, okay, wait a minute, I need to find a job that's pretty steady. So I moved into administration, not always because of the pink slip, but that was a factor in it. And so I understand getting pink slipped, and then all of a sudden we go, oh wait, we have more money. Let's try to get all those teachers back. Well, we can't always get all those teachers back. So it seems to me that we might want to prioritize the teachers and the students first, and then buy back these other things afterward.
Dr. Minor.
I just want it to be clear for the board that pink slipping teachers is not on the table, even at the proposed budget rate, which is much higher PTRs than what the board is currently proposing. Pink slips aren't something that we're considering at this point in time, and we've actually issued contracts to most of all of our both non-tenured and tenured teachers.
Thank you. I stand corrected, and I didn't realize that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Minor. Any other questions or comments from the board? Mr. Dorn.
Just for clarification, we have two magnet schools in our district, Barnett and Hutch, and there are many aspects of those. But I would also be firmly in supportive and look forward when we do a resolution, I believe, probably at our first, I would encourage at our first meeting in April, regarding prioritizing add backs, that this be one of those high priority areas.
Mr. Burgess.
I agree with Ms. Maple and Mr. Doran. I don't like this cut any more than Ms. Hardy does. I don't like any of the cuts that we have to make. But I do not see, we've put a lot of work into this, and I do not see another path forward that we would all agree on. I hear what you're saying. I don't see what else to do here, and I think that it does need to be a priority on our add back. I would love to be able to invest more in magnet schools in general, but we just do not have the funding for it. We need to get funding secured before we can add that back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. At the risk of spiraling from here, we have Mrs. Hardy.
It's just a question through the chair to the administration. You might not feel comfortable asking, but we've basically turned Barnett into a neighborhood school, but we've also turned Barnett into a neighborhood school without transportation. Is that even something that we can do, given, do we need to start providing them transportation after we've made this cut, since we have turned them into a neighborhood school at capacity, and then they have a bunch of out of attendance areas?
I would say no, not at this point in time because of the structure of the school. I do think, to Mr. Doran's point, that we have a lot of work to do in terms of, if this cut does go through, what does Barnett look like? Because it will look very different next year than it would in years past. And so, that's something to be considered in the future, whether or not we would want to return transportation, but I don't think it's something automatically that the board or the district would have to do.
Thank you, Dr. Miner. And with that, at the risk of spiraling and creating unnecessary drama here on the board, we have done a very good job. Let's go ahead and take this to a vote. We have a motion and a second on the floor. So if you would like to reinstate the 2.5 FTE for Barnett, the vote is yes. If you would like to remain with what has been proposed in the budget as of last night, which is to cut the 2.5 FTE, your vote is no. Mrs. Richardson, would you please call the vote?
Mrs. Hardy,
Yes.
Miss Maple,
No.
Mr. Burgess,
No.
Miss Julian,
No.
Miss Carol Hubbard,
Yes.
Mr. Doran,
No.
Mrs. Burnett.
Yes.
Motion failed.
Going back to the motion, Mrs. Julian.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move to amend the motion that's on the floor right now to approve the fiscal year 26 Fairbanks North Starborough School District recommended budget by including the following adjustments. And to be clear, this is not the motion that's in the agenda. This is one that is currently from the other night.
So that would be a move to amend.
Yes. So I'll read it. Move to amend the motion to approve the fiscal year 26 Fairbanks North Starborough School District recommended budget by including the following adjustments to that. Lower the pupil teacher ratio PTR for K5 to 25. Adjust and do that by adjusting, this is a package, adjusting the vacancy rate to 1%, cutting district administration to $700,000, and reducing the transportation subsidy to the amount of $1,628,000. that gets to a $0 amount, completely balanced. And if I can
Mrs.
speak
Julian,
to,
only state your motion
oh, thank you,
and you don't speak to it till it's seconded. Thank you.
thank you.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Mrs. Julian, you may now speak to it.
Okay. So I first want to say how proud I am and how grateful I am that this board entertained the proposal that I put forth to include the vacancy rate. So thank you. And I deeply respect that this board also worked hard to figure out a way that we can not increase PTR at the secondary level to the extent that we got to last night. I think that was a huge achievement. And to quote Ted Lasso, just listen to your gut, and on the way down to your gut, check in with your heart. Between those two things, they'll let you know what's what. And I think we all heard, it was impossible to not balance this budget by increasing PTR. And perhaps that is true on the whole. And I realize that I'm asking for a little bit of a risk here. But when somebody says impossible to me, all that I hear is the word possible. The amendment in question will hold the line on class sizes for our elementary students. To quote Dr. Meinert, it takes a reasonable risk in calculating just 1% savings from vacancies. It will increase the cut to district administration from $500,000, which is currently in the budget, to $700,000. And I recognize that that's above where some people want to go, and I respect that. It also includes a reasonable transportation subsidy amount that aligns with the amount the governor proposed in his budget for transportation. It actually is a little bit less risky than what the governor proposed. So I brought a football with me tonight because I fully recognize that this is a Hail Mary. I recognize this, and I am owning the fact that this is a Hail Mary moment right now. We have done such good work. We have really done really good work. We have made really tough decisions since December. I am so proud to be sitting among all of you. We are so close to achieving a little part of one of our intended goals, which is to not increase PTR. I know it can't be for everybody, but what this is it holds the line at elementary. So what I'm asking for tonight is to see if anybody wants to join me. And I'm not going to actually throw the football, but when I throw the football, can somebody pick up the ball, and will two other people run with that person across the finish line and hold the line? Thank you.
Ms. Carol Hubbard.
I'd like to speak to smaller class sizes since we're talking about PTR. I was sort of holding on to all of this, and I don't know why, but smaller class sizes reduce teacher turnover by 47%. 47%. Smaller class sizes reduce teacher absenteeism by 30%. Smaller class sizes raise reading scores by 18% and math scores by 17%. Smaller class sizes raise self-confidence in students and raise classroom engagement. Smaller class sizes raise the likelihood that students will ask questions by 62%, showing higher engagement. And smaller classes raise parental engagement. And as the chairperson of the Family Engagement Committee, I really think that's amazing. So we want more parental engagement. When we have higher parental engagement, we have higher student success. I just want to also state that I am actually very proud to be on this board as well. I think that we've done a really amazing job. I think that the unity on this board to me is outstanding, and I'm super blessed by it and super happy about it. And where I don't want to be considered as causing disunity or upsetting the apple cart, I was here last night and I'm still here. I do not support raising PTR, and I really believe that we need to rethink our add backs to other things besides the student to teacher ratio. Thank you.
Miss Maple.
I agree with everything that Miss Carol Hubbard said. I don't have doubts about any of the statistics shared. I just believe that that's the burden of the state, and that the state has failed our district, our students statewide. And so I would like to see PTR go down, and I would like to see, you know, in our strategic planning, we're talking a lot about retention, and I would love to see that be a tool for retention. But that requires more funding. And I also, you know, what Miss Julian brought forward, the vacancy rate proposal, I thought we were going to finish our meeting last night, and the only thing I'd written down for my closing comments was to thank Miss Julian for what she brought forward, because it was what I feel in our process the past 2 days, a game changer. And I still only feel comfortable with where we've brought it to at this point. So I'm incredibly grateful for the work put into that proposal. I'm incredibly grateful that this board compromised in finding a way to make use of that tool, and that we were able to bring the PTR to lower than the proposed budget because of it. But I'm not comfortable increasing the vacancy rate further, in addition to, or either with taking the additional risk on transportation as well. So I'm not in support of it, despite agreeing with everything Miss Carol Hubbard just spoke about, and right before that, everything that that Miss Hardy spoke about along the same lines, but directly to Barnett, and being grateful for what we've been able to work with thanks to Mrs. Julian's proposal, but I don't support pushing that further.
Thank you, Miss Maple. Anything further from board members? Mrs. Hardy.
I just want to confirm, is this our final vote, or is there a vote after this one on the budget?
We will still need a vote on the budget.
Thank you.
Mr. Dorn.
I am not in favor of the amendment either. And when I look at the pieces of it, actually my votes last night, I am not in favor of the vacancy rate budgeting. I think when we talk about reasonable risk or the implication, then there are unreasonable risks, and I think we're all trying to make reasonable decisions. We may come to different conclusions, but I hope we don't have implications that anyone is, and I don't think so. So when I look at the balance pieces, yes, in looking at the overall budget, I've made compromises with those things in mind to get where we are. I have lived PTRs for decades and managed them. The research on it is clear in their observations, unclear in causality. And that goes back to the earliest studies on class size back to the late 60s and to the current day. There is no question in my mind, smaller, lower PTR, and this district has historically stayed below the other big fives and has maintained that, and we've been proud and pleased to be able to do that. That being said, we are not being funded. from the state. There is a balance in terms of what happens in those classrooms. It is a challenge for teachers every time you add a student, and I'll wrap this up, I don't want to too long, but I think it's important is, you know, when you walk into the classrooms, and it's a testament to the students, we have well-run classrooms. We have well-run schools. When we look at our schools, we have not closed any poorly run schools. They've been very good schools. When we've made decisions for the staffing within that PTR, we are eating into their efforts, their energies to do their best. So with that said, I highly hope we will keep PTR as one of the high priorities, and that we will be able to come back to that, and the state leadership will come through for public education over the next couple of months. But I am not in favor of this suggested amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. Anything else from the board at this time? Seeing nothing, we will move to the vote. A yes vote will accept Ms. Julian's amendment with the items in which she has mentioned. Ms. Julian, if you would please state them once more for the board.
Absolutely. So it would be lowering the pupil to teacher ratio for K-5 to 25, adjusting the vacancy rate to 1%, cutting district administration to $700,000, and reducing the transportation subsidy to $1,628,000, which gets you to a balance.
Thank you, Mrs. Julian. If you agree with that, your vote is yes. If you do not agree, we go back to the original motion and your vote is no. Mrs. Richardson, if you would please call the vote.
Mr. Dorn,
No.
Mrs. Hardy,
No.
Miss Maple,
No.
Mr. Burgess,
No.
Miss Julian,
Yes.
Miss Carol Hubbard,
Yes.
Mrs. Barnett.
No.
Thank you. Motion failed.
We are now back to the original motion, which we do need to put on the floor. Ms. Maple.
Move to approve the FY26 school district recommended budget with budgeted revenue in all funds totaling $227,754,107 and budgeted expenditures in all funds totaling $227,754,107.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. I will bring it back to the board once more for discussion and comments. Mr. Dorn.
And would our understanding be that if we approve this budget, it will carry the main motion?
Yes, sir.
Then I do have comments if we're ready for that.
Okay, Mr. Dorn.
I wanted to share some reflections on my own perspectives and conclusions regarding the budget. And I want to stress that these are my own, and recognize that we each arrive at our own decisions based on our best understandings and interpretations. And as others have mentioned, I'm very pleased with the thoughtfulness of board members in approaching this whole budget process. I do have some concerns for the budget. As I look at the budget, it continues to foster a retractive mindset instead of building towards growth and enrichment. I feel it's primarily focused on financial drivers rather than being student-focused and education-centered. I think it acts in contradiction to both our current strategic plan and the draft for our yet-to-be-adopted strategic plan for the years ahead. And in particular, there are several areas in those strategic plans that come to the fore for me. And I'm not going to parse words, but just mention some in the current plan. They're referenced as goals in the draft that were still in development. They're referenced as pillars, but the area of workforce and organizational excellence and investing in our people are the goal and pillar respectively. The area, those are goal and pillar 4. The areas of communication and engagement and partnering with our community, the goal and pillar 3 respectively. And then when I looked at the core values, our current core values highlight student-centered, respect of all, collaboration, innovation, and the values draft in the current draft for development, belonging, community, creativity. Those are key elements that to me raise concerns for me. I also feel that we have quite a number of unanswered or unconsidered aspects reflected in the budget. That being said, I was prepared to come in tonight to vote no on the budget. I had a very nice walk out to the airport and loving the sunlight and thinking in terms of, though that's in a sense my statement on the funding, the state of funding for public education in our state and community, that wouldn't be so productive. I think it's really important that we pass this budget, pass it tonight, and we get it to the borough. And then I look really forward to our conversation about resolution that's been referenced in the next couple of weeks to formulate that, to reflect what add backs we will. We've got this year, we got last year, we got the year before. I think we need to look at that package. I am hopeful that the leadership at the state level will continue to grow. We have some great advocates in the legislature for public education. I really hope that that group will grow and the state administration will also become an advocate for public education and come forth with things. So this is one step along the way. We will be dealing with the dealing to get to an approved budget in June. I hope the Assembly and the borough will come through with as much support as they can give so that we can indeed get to those things we value, our goals, our pillars, that really center on kids and good education. So I've made my statement. I don't need to do it by saying no. I do need to do it by saying yes at this point and really working to address those concerns as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Dorn. Mr. Burgess.
Very much appreciate those comments from Mr. Doran, and I couldn't agree more that we are in this tough situation. We have to pass this budget, even though I think it is unpalatable to all of us and the members of this community. It is a product that we had to produce because of the lack of funding that we are receiving. I very much look forward to to passing a resolution that we can give to our funding sources, indicating what we would like to see in our budget that would serve students at least better than this one does. I recognize that this is this is hard to swallow for the community, and I hope that the community can understand the tough situation that we're all in. Recognize that the borough is, the school board is trying our best, and the administration here is trying our best to make something out of a really bad situation. I think this budget and the work that we've put into it does reflect the least bad decision that we could make.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Ms. Julian.
Thank you. This has been a tremendous process to go through. I'll speak also personally, and I want to thank Mr. Doran and Mr. Burgess for those comments because they're very meaningful. And I want to actually thank everybody for their comments throughout this whole process. And also to the administration and the amount of work and the amount of stress and the amount of pressure that I also know that I personally have put you under. Thank you. Thank you for being here, because you're here because of students, and you're here because you believe in public education. We're here because we believe in public education. Isn't that cool? That to me is the bedrock of this country. And I'm so proud to be able to participate in that. And I'm so honored to be able to participate in that with everyone who's a part of that. That's very cool. I had to, this year I had to close my own child's school. And because I did that because I thought we could get to a place where we could, I'm sorry for getting emotional. I did that because I thought I really wanted to get to a place where we could at least hold PTR. But I realized that that's not possible, because it's not anybody's fault up here. It really isn't. I asked you all to take risk. It's not your fault. It's because of the state. It's because we have been underfunded, grossly underfunded. Every child in this entire state has been grossly underfunded by the state, and we're here doing that work, trying to figure it out. I can't vote to support this budget, but it's not because I don't respect every single one of you and the work that you've done and the work that we've done together. But it's because when I made that incredibly tough vote, as well as voting to outsource custodial earlier this year, I did so with the intention that I would really fight and try to work so hard to hold the line on PTR. And again, my no vote tonight isn't because I don't respect the work and also understand the work that needs to go forward, and also believe that we need to just move forward and go for this. It's really for personal reasons at this point. So I just want to thank everybody and just let you know that I'm so proud to be sitting up here with you.
Thank you, Mrs. Julian. Mrs. Hardy.
I will be voting down the budget. I've never voted down the budget in my time on this board, even when there were many, many things that I did not like or agree with in those budgets. There's a lot I don't like or agree with in this budget, but that's not why I'm voting down the budget. I am voting down this budget because it is a fantasy. To ignore the realities that there is a near certainty that Deed will attempt to open a charter school in our district in the 25-26 school year is a fantasy. We will then either have a costly legal battle or a loss in revenue to the budget that's not accounted for. It will in turn, or it in turn does not account for any loss in enrollment that will happen as a direct result of the effects of this budget. Additionally, It uses accounting practices that make it appear that we have more money than we actually have. We are making a bet against our fund balance and refusing to call it what it is, a draw on that fund balance. We are using it. By using it, we are not doing what the state and borough have asked us to do repeatedly, which is to be transparent with our needs and ask for what we actually need. I cannot vote for a fantasy, and so I will be voting down this budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Hardy. Any other comments from board members? Ms. Carol Hubbard.
Thank you. I will likely vote down the budget based on PTR because I don't agree with it. And I think that it's backwards. I think that we should be prioritizing the PTR first and then putting the rest of it on the heels of that. I think that, well, I don't agree with the premise that we're spending the fund balance. I just feel, I mean, in my opinion, looking at the budget, the vacancy rate addresses money that is slated to spend but is not being spent, and so that's it's not dipping into our savings account, but that's just a difference of opinion, I think. So I do want to classroom teachers are the most important part of the success of a student. They are more important than programs. They're more important than curriculum, technology, and so that means that teacher morale is more important than programs and curriculum and technology. And as a former teacher, I am speaking on behalf of the teachers who I know almost zero in this district, but because my children don't go here, so I don't know the teachers personally, but I do know what it feels like to face an overcrowded classroom, what it feels like to address so many students and you spend a lot of time on discipline, on organization, and much less time on teaching and learning. And so PTR is just where I want to end, and I just want to continue to support low PTR for student success.
Ms. Maple.
I would love to not raise PTR in any classroom. I would love to put forward an unbalanced budget that actually says, here's exactly what we need to run our schools, exactly how our students deserve for our schools to be run. And that, unfortunately, is not what I was elected to do. I was elected to produce a balanced budget, and we have done that, and I have been incredibly, echoing what many of you have already said, impressed by the respectful, engaging debate over the past several days, weeks, months for that matter. I've been continually impressed to watch as folks' minds changed, mine included, on various issues that have come before us. I think we've done good work. I think Mr. Burgess said that it's the least bad decision we could make, and I agree wholeheartedly. I don't like a lot of the things in this budget, and I do support it, and I support the work that we've done to get here. Yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maple. That will leave with my comments, and then we will call for the vote. I absolutely appreciate the work that has gone into this budget, from administration to the board, Dr. Meinert. It has been a heck of the last few months. We started in November with custodial, went through into January with the schools, and now we're here. I recognize how hard this has been for every single one of you. And I know that this is not a budget that any of us have things in that we go, yes, this is perfect. There is something in this budget, each and every one of us is sitting here going, yikes. absolutely yikes. The notion that anyone on this board wants to raise PTR, and that does not come from this board, but that has been something that has come through just from the general public. It is absolutely false. Everyone here is committed to seeing that decrease. We are in difficulty. We are in a budget that I wouldn't wish this on anybody. I wouldn't wish this budget on anyone. It's not perfect. There are, like many board members have said, there are certain things in here that I wish weren't or wish were. For 2 years being on this board, previous budgets, I voted them down. My first year on the board, I voted it down. My second year last year, voted it down. We put Miss Hardy in a place where she had to vote it. And so I understand. I do. And anybody who votes this budget down, I do not put any blame, any ill will on any board member who votes this down. I understand. I will support it, knowing that it reflects the best efforts of this board and the work that we have done. I sincerely thank each and every one of you for your time away from your families, for your time away from work, for your time that you probably could have been spending to self-care and resting, and you didn't do any of that. You focused it on this work. Your commitment, your passion for our students, for our community, it is beautiful. And it is something that keeps me going as hard as this has been. And trust me, this has been hard. I know I sit here and I stone face most of this. I go home and I break. I'm sorry to this community, but please know that this is not our last go around with this budget. It will come back to us. And I am going to be dedicated to trying to decrease that PTR as much as we can. And I hope that our legislators are listening. I hope they're watching. I hope you're seeing what we're doing. And I hope that you pass the $1,000 BSA and HB 69. And I hope that you do what's right for public education. Mrs. Richardson, would you please call the vote?
Miss Carol Hubbard,
No.
Mr. Dorn,
Yes.
Mrs. Hardy,
No.
Miss Maple,
Yes.
Mr. Burgess,
Yes.
Miss Julian,
No.
Mrs. Barnett.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Thank you, Mrs. Richardson. That will bring us to our last remaining board comments. If any board members would like to close with some final comments, you may do so now. Mr. Dorn.
Just want to say a thank you to the administration, including those who are not here tonight because we've been going on multiple nights, but for all the work going in and for massaging different numbers along the line over months. But I know that it's been a lot of work on your parts, so I want to say that, and I do want to say thank you to President Barnett in guiding us through this few days, and look forward to our continued conversations.
Thank you, Mr. Dorn. Mrs. Hardy?
Just want to say there's an opportunity for public testimony on House Bill 69, which is the bill to raise the BSA, including some other policy things now, tomorrow, Friday the 21st at 3:30 p.m. Fairbanks can call in at 844-586-9085. This is in Senate Education Committee. You can also submit written testimony at the email. It's better off to get that online. That number for outside of Anchorage or Juneau is 844-586-9085. They start taking testimony at 3:30. You need to get in line. Please advocate to raise the BSA.
Miss Carol Hubbard?
Thank you. I want to leave on a happy note. I spent the day at the Interior Alaska Science Fair over at Pioneer Park, aka Alaska Land, and some amazing science fair projects over there. We were judging and doing student interviews today and had an absolute wonderful time. We have some amazing students in this Fairbanks North Star Borough, and tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. is public viewing in the Pickle Barrel. So at Pioneer Park, I believe, I don't know what we call it now. I don't know what it's called. What is it? Civic Center? Okay, Civic Center. And so tomorrow, 9 to 6, to check out the science fair projects. Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Seeing none, I would take a motion to adjourn at this time.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We're now adjourned.